Hey, did you know that there is going to be a school on Mars? Well, not in the near future, but one day it's gonna happen. There are many things we need to consider about what life on Mars will be like. Like, how will people breathe? How will they eat? And most importantly, how will kids go to school? Well, for the last question, NASA has already come up with an answer and it's pretty insane. So here's what would happen if school was on Mars. First of all, who would teach the classes? In the early stages of colonizing Mars, it would likely be only scientists and researchers that would be living on the red planet. We can assume that these people would have higher education degrees and maybe even PhDs, just like the scientists and researchers that currently work at NASA. So theoretically, they could teach the children basic classes like math and science. But other subjects like literature or history would be harder to teach because they read based on Earth's culture and environment, which is something that you can't really learn on Mars. So at first, maybe these scientists would just homeschool their own kids while also doing research. But since there will be so many kids born on Mars, this probably won't work out. There will have to be schools eventually. But since there won't be enough teachers, students will likely have to learn by themselves via video lessons. This is similar to how homeschooling works today. And believe it or not, it actually does work. Now let's get back to our original question of how school would work on Mars. Now that we've figured out who would teach, we can move on to what the curriculum would look like. Obviously, standard classes like math and science would still be taught in school, but there would also be some new and unique ones too. For example, geology would be an important class because Mars is full of rocks. Students would learn about the composition of rocks and minerals on Mars and how they formed. Astronomy would also be a very interesting class on Mars. Kids would be able to see Earth as a star in the night sky and learn about the solar system and other planets. Since communication between Earth and Mars would take around 20 minutes, kids could even schedule video calls with their relatives on Earth and learn about life on our planet from their perspective. The most obvious new class would be survival training. Living on Mars will be very hard and dangerous, and it is likely that everyone will have to work together to keep the colony alive. So teaching kids how to grow food, maintain the habitat, and protect themselves would be crucial. Another class that might be added to the curriculum is psychology. Living in such a confined space with limited resources could have negative effects on people's mental health. So having someone to talk to would be important. That is why the colonists may ask the kids to befriend everyone in the colony and always be respectful. Although being friendly to everyone sounds nice, it could also be a way to control the population. If everyone knows everyone and every kid is best friends with everyone else's kids, then no one would be able to hide anything. This is basically the premise of the movie The Giver. If you haven't seen it, it's a must-watch. Anyway, after school, the kids would probably help out around the colony for a bit and then return home to eat dinner with their parents and get ready for bed. Life on Mars will be very different from life on Earth, and for that reason, bedtime stories would have a new meaning. Before going to bed, parents would tell their kids stories about Earth's nature, culture, and history so that their kids don't forget where they came from. They would describe what a tree looks like, how rain feels like, and what it's like to walk outside without a spacesuit. These bedtime stories would become a very important part of the Martian culture. And just like how we use stories to teach kids valuable lessons, parents would use their stories to teach their kids about the importance of Earth. Next, let's move on to the school building itself. What would it look like? One important thing to remember is that we can't build anything tall on Mars. Due to low gravity, the structure could easily collapse. That's why any building on Mars will have to be very low, maybe only 1 or 2 stories tall. The dome shape is the most likely design for a Martian school because it will be strong enough to withstand meteor impacts. To make the dome as strong as possible, it would have to be made from concrete. However, we can't just make concrete on Mars yet because we do and have the technology to turn Martian materials into cement. Cement is the key ingredient that makes concrete strong and hard. It's made by heating limestone, clay, and sand in a kiln. But we can't do this on Mars yet because we don't have the right materials and energy sources. The good news is that NASA has found a solution to this problem. They discovered that Martian soil contains perchlorates, which are salts that contain chlorine and oxygen. When mixed with other chemicals, these perchlorates can be turned into chlorine. And guess what? Chlorine is a key ingredient in making cement. So we can totally make schools on Mars. Just imagine how awesome it would be to build the first ever school on another planet. We can also use 3D printing to speed up the construction process. A 3D printer can create complex shapes using a computer's instructions, and it can do it much faster than humans. All we need to do is just lay the foundation and then let the 3D printer do all the work. Speaking of foundations, let's talk about what the school playground would look like. It would be very boring if kids just played on a regular gray field all day, right? That's why the playground would also be designed to look like fun and exciting places on Earth. For example, they could build a slide that goes down a hill or maybe a sandbox that simulates a beach. Of course, these playgrounds would still be inside the dome, but it's the thought that counts. Speaking of the dome, it would get very hot inside. That is why the playground would also have to include a pool with very cold water so that kids can cool off. And lastly, the playground would definitely include a parkour course. Running, jumping, and climbing are some of the most fun things to do on a playground. But when you're wearing a bulky spacesuit, it gets a lot harder. That is why the parkour course would help kids practice moving in a spacesuit and prepare them for the day when they have to venture outside the dome. It is very important that we train our bodies to adapt to the new environment, because if we don't, we will get seriously injured or even die. Take Michael, for example. He spent most of his life in zero gravity, and that made his bones and muscles very weak. When he finally returned to Earth, he broke his foot and had to be hospitalized. So yeah, we definitely want to avoid situations like this. And lastly, let's talk about what school lunches would be like. As I mentioned earlier, growing food on Mars will be very challenging. It will take years to figure out how to farm efficiently in Martian conditions. So for the first few decades, most food will have to be shipped from Earth. That means that Martian school lunches would look very similar to space shuttle lunches, which mostly consist of prepackaged foods like sandwiches and snacks. These prepackaged meals are designed to last a long time and require little to no preparation. They also include a variety of foods to ensure that astronauts get all the nutrients they need. Astronauts usually eat cold food because heating it up requires a lot of energy. But the temperature inside the colony should be warm enough so that the food isn't freezing cold. Regardless, it's unlikely that kids will complain about the food since they probably never tasted fresh food before. The same goes for breakfast and dinner. Most of the time, people on Mars will eat prepackaged food. But if anyone wants to cook their own meals, they can use the hydroponic garden for fresh ingredients. Hydroponic gardens are farms that don't use soil. Instead, plants are grown in a nutrient-rich water solution. These gardens will be very efficient because we can reuse the water and nutrients over and over again. Growing food on Mars will be very challenging in the beginning because we don't know how Martian soil and weather will affect plant growth. Over time, we will figure out how to grow crops on Mars, and the school lunches will change to reflect that. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, big shout out to our supporters. Your support helps us make the best videos possible.